Hey guys, what's up, and welcome back to another episode of On My Bookshelf, this little series I'm doing where I'm talking about some of my favorite books. Hopefully it'll encourage you to check some of these out. So today's episode, we're talking about John Steinbeck, the great American writer. If you force me to pick my favorite American writer who's not alive today, I would probably pick John Steinbeck. He's one of my all-time favorite writers, so I'm really excited to share some of his works with you today. You've probably heard of him. You've probably read maybe one or two of his books in high school, but he won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1962 and considered one of the all-time greats. So let's jump in. First, we're going to start with two works that are out of his Dust Bowl trilogy. Some of you may have already read this one. This is called Of Mice and Men. Really common. A lot of folks read it in high school. It's a short novella set in the Great Depression about two ranch hands, George and Lenny, working through the Great Depression and trying to save up to buy a farm. Originally written as a play, tragedy. Yeah, it's incredibly tragic, but really, really powerful. Amazing story. So if you haven't read this one, if you didn't get a chance to read it in high school, check it out. And if you did, give it another read. It's really, really great. So second, probably his best known work is The Grapes of Wrath, of course, which is about set in the Depression as well. It describes, talks about a family of sharecroppers, the Joads, who they're forced to leave Oklahoma and travel out west because of the Dust Bowl to California. And it's considered by many to be one of, if not the great American novel. It won a ton of awards, the National Book Award, a Pulitzer Prize for fiction. Yeah, if you have read this book in high school, really encourage you to check it out again. There's a reason why it's considered one of the all-time greats and has stood the test of time. So, really love this one. It's been a couple of years since I've read it, so. Yeah, can't count that one out. If you've never read it, you got to do it. It's one of the great American novels. So next, actually the only book on my shelf by Steinbeck that I haven't read, another novella called Cannery Row. So if you have any great thoughts or experiences about this, send them my way. Another one that is sometimes that sometimes people read in school, The Red Pony. I think people read this in middle school. But it's a really small kind of novella about a young boy and his pony, his horse. He'd grown up on a ranch in California. It's kind of a coming of age tale, sort of about life and death and all those themes. Definitely worth checking out. I mean, especially if you love Steinbeck's works. Now the next one is low key one of my favorite things he's ever written. It's called The Pearl. It's another novella. It's super short. I love to recommend this one to people because I think it's such a great blend. I think it's kind of a classic Steinbeck writing because he's an incredible line-by-line writer. I mean, just lyrically, his prose is amazing. But a lot of more literary novels tend to be really slow and can be hard to read sometimes. But this is like an incredibly the story draws you in. It's actually based on a Mexican folktale that he picked up when he was traveling in Baja, California, and it's about a fisherman who finds this pearl of great value and sort of what happens. This really amazing cautionary tale. So definitely check out The Pearl. It's great stuff. So now we've come to one of my favorite books of all time, and I'm sure you've heard of it, but it's a biggie. It's not small, not like The Pearl. This is a big one. It's called East of Eden, and Steinbeck himself said he considered this to be his magnum opus. He even said he kept a journal while he was writing the book, which you can buy, which I've read, portions of, which are amazing. But he said while he was writing it that everything he had written up until that point was, in a sense, practice for this novel. So it's much more sort of sweeping in its scale than the Grapes of Wrath. I totally understand why, the Grapes of Wrath gets the credit it deserves. But if you've never read this one and you love Steinbeck, you got to check this one out. It's about this epic saga of two families, the Trasks and the Hamiltons, and their stories of how they interwoven stories in the Salinas Valley in California, which is where John Steinbeck grew up. A lot of biblical themes in this book, which honestly, there's a lot of biblical themes in a lot of Steinbeck's writing. He grew up, technically he was affiliated with the Episcopalian Church. I think he probably, from what I understand, would not describe himself as a Christian, but because he was very familiar with the Bible and the biblical text. So a lot of parallels to the story of Cain and Abel, and even in this book, there's a whole section where they talk about a passage from Genesis 4 where God is cursing Cain, and he says, if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. And there's this whole passage in this novel where these two characters are talking about this Hebrew word, timshel, and it's it's the phrase where it's but you must rule over it. So it's you must rule over it, or thou mayest. And the character in the book is saying, if timshel means thou mayest, then men have the choice to make good choices or bad choices. And one of these characters is grappling with sort of this really ugly, dark, depraved family legacy, and he's sort of wrestling with, do I have a choice to live a different life? So really, really fascinating, amazing, one of the great works. I mean, it'll take you some time to get through it for sure. I think it took me I read it a few summers ago. I think it took me all summer, 2 or 3 months, but 100% worth your time. Please check it out. And then the last one that I want to talk to you guys about is a hidden gem. A hidden gem. If you're a Steinbeck fan, or if you know somebody who loves books or loves reading, this is a great, great gift. And it's called Travels with Charlie. This is actually one of my favorite books that I do own. I bought it at the Decatur Book Festival from this rare rare books dealer. You can tell it's super old. I think this is the 8th printing from 1962. But Travels with Charlie is nonfiction. It's a true story of when John Steinbeck was an older man. Look at the inside flap there. He felt sort of at distance from, he didn't understand America as much, and so he hopped in he converted this van into a little home, and hopped in that van with his poodle, Charlie, his giant poodle, and they just traveled the country, and he just wanted to travel and get out there and talk to people and just sort of reacquaint himself with America and with its people, which it's an amazing sort of insight into the man, and the man himself, John Steinbeck. And one of the things that he's really known for is writing from the perspective of the everyday man, the average American, the migrant, worker, the blue collar worker, if you will. And in this book, it's really interesting to see all the different interactions he has with different people, and it's one of my all-time favorites. I'll read you a passage. This is from one of the first chapters. He says, "My plan was clear, concise, and reasonable, I think. For many years, I have traveled in many parts of the world. In America, I live in New York, or dip into Chicago or San Francisco. But New York is no more America than Paris is France, or London is England. Thus, I discovered that I did not know my own country. I, an American writer, writing about America, was working from memory, and the memory is at best a faulty, warpy reservoir. I had not heard the speech of America, smelled the grass and trees and sewage, seen its hills and water, its color and the quality of light. I knew the changes only from books and newspapers. But more than this, I had not felt the country for 25 years. In short, I was writing of something I did not know about, and it seems to me that in a so-called writer, this is criminal. So yeah, hopefully that gives you, that whets your appetite. That's what Charlie looked like, his giant poodle. And that's what Steinbeck looked like when he went on this road trip. He was an older man. So yeah, that's all I have to say. There's a lot more that could be said about Steinbeck, of course, but I really hope you'll check out some of his works. So thanks so much for watching.